Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Infowars Nightly News. I'm your host, Aaron Dykes. Today is Monday, July 23rd, 2012.
Tonight, new details emerge and witnesses come forward as the false flag investigation intensifies. In the Dark Knight Massacre, Alex Jones breaks down the psyop. Then, how to stop a massacre that doesn't cost taxpayers money. A YouTube video of a senior citizen shooting two cyber cafe robbers in self-defense.
So tonight in the news, Batman Massacre suspect James Holmes is in court, and survivors and witnesses say he just looks crazy. His eyes are demonic. He's there with the red hair. Didn't say anything in court, not so much the Joker now. Everyone's been commenting. So the real question is, was he drugged? Was he some kind of mind control suspect? While that evidence emerges, we have the eerie coincidence where they had the drill on the same day, just like on 9/11, just like on 7/7, and so many other incidences. Paul Joseph Watson has the story based off the Denver Post report of how the Rocky Vista University College of Osteopathic Medicine, just a few miles down the road, was holding a specialized disaster training class for 150 second-year medical students, along with other scenarios including terrorist attacks, hurricanes, and floods, was training students how to respond if a shooter fires at people in a movie theater, as well as using a bomb in the same attack scenario. That is a chilling coincidence, or perhaps a good deal more. Specifically, one of the scenarios being used to train the students how to respond if a shooter fires at people in a movie theater and use a bomb from the attack. That's the quote in the Denver Post. And we also have the witnesses. Now, whereas the police chief came out immediately and said there's only one suspect, we got him, it's the Joker, other witnesses said something different. We're going to play that video in just a second, but they said the gas canisters were thrown from different directions and clearly indicated somebody probably helped him get in through that exit door. Let's roll that clip now.
All the evidence we have, every single indicator is that this is all Mr. Holmes's activity, and that he wasn't particularly aided by anyone else.
Well, I noticed the guy walked in from into the auditorium, sat into the very front row to the far right, and he got a phone call. And most people, when they get phone calls in theaters, they go straight out into the lobby to answer it. This person went directly to the emergency exit to take his phone call, which I thought was unusual. He seemed like he had his foot propped open by the door, and from the crack, it looked like he was signaling somebody or looking for somebody to come his way.
As I was sitting down to get my seat, I noticed that a person came up to the front row, to the front right, sat down, and as credits were going, I noticed it seemed like he got a phone call. So he went out towards the emergency exit doorway, which I thought was unusual, to take a phone call. And it seemed like he probably pried it open or probably did not let it latch all the way. Soon as the movie started, somebody came in, all black, gas mask, armor, and threw a gas can into the audience, and it went off, and then there was gunshots that took place.
From what we saw, he wasn't alone. He had someone with him because the second can of tear gas didn't come from his side. He was completely dressed in black, head to toe. From what we saw, it seemed like he had something over his face, probably to prevent him from breathing it in. And we can only assume that someone got him in.
All the evidence we have, every single indicator is that this is all Mr. Holmes's activity, and that he wasn't particularly aided by anyone else.
And what we need to do is change the way in which people think about guns, especially young people. We need to do this every day of the week and just really brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way. And just really brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way.
So this is the question we need to get into about the Batman Massacre. Were there other suspects? Was he helped? Was this a false flag? That's why we're going to get into this. Not should we ban guns when there was already gun control in Aurora, but of course we're going to get into that as well. Now, we already covered this, but I'll bring it up again. The Homeland Security FBI memo warning of theater attacks. And they pointed to, among other things, the Moscow theater hostage crisis of 2002, when they had several hundred hostages. Many of them died, more than 120 of the hostages, as well as all the supposed Chechen terrorists who they knocked out with the gas, killed many of them. But, of course, it emerged the FSB was in the works and basically running the whole attack. Even that is all on Wikipedia, so we've covered that. And then we have Kurt Nemo's article from earlier today. Colorado shooter had more in common with paramilitary cops than Batman, really profiling all his gear and all the weapons he had collected. We estimated it was probably about $20,000 in gear between what he had on him at the theater and what was later found in his apartment. But of course, there again, it's reality blurring with fiction, because really this whole Dark Knight Batman series was based on Batman having paramilitary gear that he got from the Bruce Wayne Company, and he basically outfitted himself with the kind of riot cop uniform that we now see at every major protest, every time there's supposedly a terror attack. This is what we're being conditioned. Whenever something happens, we're supposed to see the savior in black riot cop gear. So I want to turn your attention now to a Financial Times article from 2 years ago, July 2010. Remember, we're in the Obama administration. Rahm Emanuel never let a good crisis go to waste. Obviously, the election is coming up. The big question with any terror attack, whether it's staged or not, is who benefits? Who's going to mourn on the backs of the victims and call for new controls, new policies, or just a re-election? Well, here's Obama facing a growing credibility crisis. He's had this terrible term. People don't like him. Now you've got Rob Shapiro, a former Clinton advisor, now an Obama advisor, saying the bottom line here is Americans don't believe in President Obama's leadership. He has to find some way between now and November of demonstrating that he is a leader who can command confidence, and short of a 9/11 event or an Oklahoma City bombing, I don't see how he could do that. And that is just one step away from directly calling for attacks to bolster Obama's popularity. Instead, it's the Rahm Emanuel policy of wait till there is a crisis, then let's exploit it to the hilt for Obama's political gain so he can get reelected. He's not the only one, as you know. You remember the Glenn Beck clip, but let's play it right now, where he says they're about to blame the next false flag on him. That really means anyone either on the right wing or who looks right wing.
I will be the guy who causes the next Oklahoma City. This is in a letter, an appeal to advertisers of Fox. Dear Fox advertisers, read this part of it. No one, left, right, center, wants to see another Oklahoma City. The next assassin may succeed. If so, there will be blood on many hands. They are setting up another Oklahoma City. They are claiming that one is coming, and they've already marked the one who caused it. You know, what's a few hundred men, women, and children when you could win back the House in 2012? I mean, wouldn't that be great? After all, the ends justify the means.
And they did push Glenn Beck off the air. He was, in some cases, exposing some real truth on Fox News. It did become uncomfortable. They did target his sponsors. But the bigger story is how they used the cutout pattern of whenever you expect an attack, then you get ready to blame it on your political enemies. But it gets deeper than that. Who is in the clip he's specifically talking about? It's Chris Matthews, and it's another Clinton advisor who is now an Obama advisor. His name is Mark Penn. Pay very close attention to the choice of words he uses. He wants the president to reconnect with the people through these crises. Let's roll the clip.
Listen to a clip from a Democratic pollster, Mark Penn, happened just the other day, and yet no one pays attention to it.
Cabinets don't really sell things. The president himself has to reconnect with the people. Remember, President Clinton reconnected through Oklahoma, right? And the president right now, he seems removed. And it wasn't until that speech that he clicked with the American public. Obama needs a similar kind
You think words will work for...
So Clinton exploited the Oklahoma City staged false flag event. Again, we've had the witnesses on, the filmmakers of Noble Lie. They really covered it in depth. There's no doubt about that. And they praised Clinton for exploiting the crisis and using it to his own political gain. Among other things, they would go on to pass the assault weapons ban on the back of the Oklahoma City thing and the fear of these right-wing militia people. Now, you can't really see the date, although it is marked on that clip. That was November 4th, 2010. not long after the Robert Shapiro clip. Let's go to another clip of Chris Matthews and the same Clinton and Obama advisor, Mark Penn. But this one is from 1 week after the Gifford shooting. That would be January 2011. Let's roll that clip. Now, but hold on, before we roll that clip, I want to remind you, Mark Penn says the president needs to reconnect with the people. Will he reconnect? Let's roll the clip.
You once said on this program, and I want to get the context right, that every president looks forward at some point in their presidency to be president of the people.
Well, and I think the president rose to the occasion last night. He connected with the American people.
Well, he accomplished it on the backs of the Gifford shooting.
Nonpartisan way. He really reconnected, I think, to the American people. I think he underscored the reason why
reconnected with the people.
Elected him as president.
We may need to play that again just so it sinks in that he's using the key word of how he reconnected with the people after the Gifford shooting. The same language he used when calling for a new Oklahoma City, new 9/11 style attack. This Mark Penn guy said Obama needs to reconnect through these terror attacks. Here he is trying to exploit the Giffords clip. Just play that same clip over again, please.
You once said on this program, and I want to get the context right, that every president looks forward at some point in their presidency to be president of the people.
Well, and I think the president rose to the occasion last night. He connected with the American people, and he did it in an extremely sensitive, nonpartisan way. He really reconnected, I think, to the American people. I think he underscored the reason why America elected him as president.
So clearly Obama reconnected on the back of the Gifford shooting, just as they hoped he would do. But what are they going to use it for? Let's page Rahm Emanuel. How do you let this crisis not go to waste? Could it be gun control? Let's roll the next part of the same clip. Still Chris Matthews, still Mark Penn calling for a new terror attack.
This is kind of a weird overlay here.
Look, I think this
of right-wing thinking, right-wing talking, and bring your gun.
This incident and the way the president's handled it, quite the opposite, is bringing back bills such as the assault weapons ban. I would not be surprised if the State of the Union does not have, after this incident, something like the assault weapons ban. I think the president.
But that won't go anywhere.
So clearly, you have a top Clinton advisor who helped him get through the assault weapons ban. He specifies in polling. His big specialty is seeing if the population will accept any given measure at a given time. Polling expert. He thinks they're going to use the Gifford shooting for the assault weapons ban. He's not totally correct because there's been so much heat that really there's an American revolution starting over the gun issue. If they really try to ban guns, people are going to go absolutely crazy with fury. There's a reason people are buying 5 million guns, 4 million guns, 2 million guns per month in this country. It's not to get violent. It's to send a clear message that you don't infringe upon the Second Amendment rights. But they're trying to. How? Obama has always said it. Under the radar. That's what he told the Brady Commission. And so now they're trying to work it through the UN gun treaty. This Batman massacre happens. Oh no, another shooter. Will it be enough to shift the votes they need to ratify this stinking treaty that violates our Second Amendment? Let's hope not, but it's pretty clear they would like to use it for that in conjunction with Obama's upcoming re-election. And finally, we have, of course, Michael Weiner Savage, who also predicted another Reichstag fire type event, another false flag in the Obama administration to help with re-election and again blame the right wing. We'll play that clip as well.
I made a prediction on this show yesterday that I'll repeat right now so that you can mark it down. Savage predicts a Reichstag fire-like event sometime within the next year or two in America that will have been conducted by the government and blamed upon subversive elements in order to permit a dictatorship and a naked dictatorship to emerge in this country. If you think I'm making this up, you're right, I'm making it up. But I'm not making it up out of whole cloth. I'm making it up out of historical cloth.
And so we've asked the question at Infowars 2 years ago, of course, will Obama force America to absorb a terror attack to save his presidency? Well, it doesn't quite look like 9/11 every time. Everything's different. But will it be a combination of Giffords, Trayvon, and now the Batman massacre? Could something else happen before the election? Could something else happen even before this UN gun treaty? We have to be on watch. So what is a false flag? Of course, it's a covert operation conducted by governments, corporations, other organizations that are designed to appear as though they are carried out by other entities. Of course, you know that, but it's the whole thing the public never gets about who benefits. Key bono. Why would they stage something? Well, let's look back to Denver. We were there less than a year ago to witness them doing drills about a shooter in a mall, a shooter in a sports stadium. What happens if there's a shooter in a school in the Denver area? They carried it out at more than 10 locations, trains, bus stations. They didn't do a movie theater, but it's not exactly outside of the realm of imagination. You have to remember that Homeland Security under Janet Napolitano has been all about rebranding al-Qaeda, because there are partners in Libya and Syria and probably the Iran war too, and rebranding it to white al-Qaeda. We got to look out for lone wolf attacks. We've got the FBI memo over here warning about theater attacks. So could it be a random white guy shooting someone up? Would they use that event to stage a pretext for clamping down on guns, for bringing in more security? They're already saying there's going to be more security at these theaters. And I guess they're going to roll out TSA everywhere and take away all the guns. I don't know. But you saw what happened with 9/11. Was it a false flag? Well, look at the evidence. They used it to launch the Afghanistan war, the Iraq war, and the larger war on terror. And every time Bush got in political trouble, they hit the button on the color-coded terror alerts and hyped it up in the media and used that to give Bush a political point bounce in the polls. And it's the same tactic they're using now with Obama on the backs of these gun tragedies. So looking further back into the evidence of false flags, there's so many cases, it's really too many to actually go through right here, but it's very historically based. Of course, there's Operation Northwoods, where they were going to stage shoot-downs of planes to enter us into a war with Cuba. They were going to stage sniper attacks in the D.C. and I think New York areas. The Pentagon admitted they were going to do this. This Operation Northwoods was, of course, declassified. It came out to public knowledge circa 2001, but this was going on back in 1962, circa then, when we were in the conflict with Cuba, around the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, shortly after the whole invasion of Cuba failed, and the CIA had, quote, egg on their face. So they looked to stage attacks to get us into the war that the public, and Kennedy in particular, would no longer accept. Moving on, there's all the other cases. If we could just roll some of that terror storm footage, it's laid out very cleanly there. Of course, the classic 1933 Reichstag fire, when Hitler staged the patsy from the Communist Party. They burned down the Reichstag, which is the parliament building in Germany, and they blame the far left wing to allow Hitler and the Nazis to come into power. That was how they passed the Enabling Act, and that's how Hitler got his whole roll on. That's how he got his groove on, through a false flag. And they do it today, even if you don't think they're as nasty as the Nazis. So there's, of course, also Operation Ajax, which was the destabilization coup in 1953 in Iran to take out Mossadegh. That was an admittedly CIA-run operation. Kermit Roosevelt headed it. You saw Terror Storm if you've been watching this program, but what they don't want is a strong leader in any given country, so they stage an event to drive him out of office. Now, instead of doing an assassination in this case, they did a discrediting campaign by passing out the flyers and everything else, but that's on record. Then, of course, there's the Gulf of Tonkin. How do we get into the Vietnam War? Well, we'll say that they shot down one of our ships. Doesn't matter if the ship wasn't there. Doesn't matter if the ship went down. Doesn't matter if there was any gunfire. Doesn't matter if it really happened. The point is the perception in the media that we were attacked and need to now go to war. And there's some of the footage. Of course, the USS Liberty attack that Israeli helped stage with some of the U.S. forces to get U.S. in the war with Israel and Egypt. There was also the Lavon affair, where Mossad and other Israeli intelligence assets staged in 1954 an admitted false flag operation with many elements, but part of it was a theater fire shooting. And that was to keep British troops in Egypt for some of the same reasons. So you've always got a mix of geopolitical and purely political reasons, but they always want to push your buttons and set things up so that they are the saviors. The new regime, the new policy, the new law, what have you, is coming to save the day from these terrible false flag events. Now, moving on. Of course, the 7/7 bombing in 2005 in London. We've covered at length, of course, in the Terror Storm documentary itself, how the whole thing was staged. They were running drills just as they were doing the drill in Denver, just as they were doing tabletop drills in 9/11, dozens of them, in fact, on the day in London on the 7/7 bombings. They were running a nearly identical scenario in the London underground tube system on that day. There's a reason for that. It's partially to distract the mechanism, which is actually supposed to watch and catch these events, because they think it's just something that was part of the drill, and it secondarily operates as cover for an explanation as to why these things were going on, and so that handlers, in particular, so that the handlers don't get caught when they're found to be associated. Oh, they were just part of that drill. And then the public forgets about it, and the people inside the system either go along with it or freak out. And there are so many other false flag examples. It's just mentally exhausting to try to even list them all for you. But of course, there was the RFK assassination. Many people credibly believe that Sirhan may well have been on mind control substances of some kind. It was kind of an exotic period for mind control. Obviously, it was going on at the CIA. In fact, many CIA officials later admitted to being part of that assassination plot. And there was the whole deal with the woman in the polka-dotted dress, all the bizarre writings of Sirhan. But most importantly, there's the fact that the RFK assassination was used to hammer home the gun control. In 1968, they were already using his brother's death, the JFK assassination, and the MLK assassination to try to push through the Omnibus Crime Control Act and the Safe Streets Act of 1968, then the Gun Control Act itself. It wasn't going to push the House. The people knew that America would not accept it. And then the RFK assassination happened, and that was enough to push the votes over and get that dirty legislation through. Did you know that? It's on Wikipedia. They don't talk about it much, but it's true. Now, in this case, we don't know everything about the shooter yet. Those details are beginning to emerge, but we know they're trying to use the crises to bring out conversations about gun control. Should we have more security everywhere we go in public? At grocery stores, I guess, shopping malls. They've been talking about in Homeland Security for years now. Now, we're going to show you just a few examples of propaganda of how they cover the massacre, and then right next to it, you could argue subconsciously or just related on the same page, are these conversations about what security measures we need. Let's roll those clips and talk about them. All right, so we've got the shooter. He's depraved. I believe that's in the New York Post. And then there at the bottom, gun sales spike. So it's got you thinking about gun sales. Should people even be allowed to own guns? Is this even America anymore if some crazed person goes into a theater in a town with gun control? Let's go to the next example. It's the Chicago Sun-Times. How can theaters keep people safe? All this terrible stuff about the movie massacre. How can theaters keep their customers safe? Now we have to talk about this nationwide. Let's just keep going through these one after another. Out of the darkness, the nightmare unreels. All these terrible tragedies, the victims hugging. And then down at the bottom, when the outrageous is ordinary. Experts suggest a number of Americans are becoming desensitized to violence, even mass murder. So we're blurring the lines between fiction and reality. Are we even still conscious of these episodes when they happen? They just kind of pass through the media as they bring up the countermeasure of safety and security. Well, what did Benjamin Franklin say about that? Here's the LA Times, the Midnight Massacre. Shocking headline, the big bold. And then buried in the bottom of the article, shaken film industry acts. Theater owners review security. So are we going to have TSA or some kind of equivalent security force? Well, many theaters already have security, but it's basically a joke. Anybody could do anything if they really wanted to. The purpose is you can't prohibit weapons. Anything could be a weapon. Any object of any size, this pen could be a weapon. It's all about the intent of the person. We should have a conversation about media violence and what's being put into people's heads. We should have a conversation about all these psychotropic drugs being prescribed for flimsy reasons. All this kind of stuff. We don't necessarily need TSA to show up at our toilet inspection agency, as South Park said. I think there's even more newspapers. Let's go on here. How many more must die, Mr. President? In other words, with Columbine, Virginia Tech, Bingham, it's kind of becoming an elephant in the room with these guns. How can we allow guns in these countries? Yeah, well, the SWAT teams don't even go in and stop the killer in most cases. Virginia Tech comes to mind, where they stood down for hours and made sure the victim toll spiked up. Next. And so here's more articles. What can be done to prevent mass shootings at public places? And they got a couple of yahoos who say they need scanning devices everywhere, every movie theater, anywhere there's a lot of people gathered. Take guns away from the nuts. That's what Claire Barnes says. It would be prohibitively expensive to put metal detectors everywhere. That's, of course, actually true. You're not going to stop anything. So they have two people in favor of total control freak syndrome and one person who realizes you can't protect everyone in society at all times. Life is risky. You could die anytime driving down the road, etc. Just because you have police on the highway doesn't mean bad things aren't still going to happen. That doesn't mean you need 10 times the police on the highway. So you see them rolling out the propaganda, but for what purpose? Again, if it's a false flag, who benefits? If it's not a false flag, it's the same question. It's a chemistry conversion. You have one set of events, you want to enter into another state where you have the policies you want. What do you need to get there? You need a catalyst. Just like 9/11 was a catalyst for the whole war on terror, these shootings are a catalyst for the same script they've been using since the Oklahoma City bombings and since the Loeffner shooting. Now, what did they do this time? They immediately accidentally said this guy was a member of the Tea Party, just as they did with Jared Lee Loeffner after the Gifford shooting. And of course, they did similar demonization of the right wing during the Oklahoma City script. Now, here's David Gregory rolling out the exact same talking point we saw after the Gifford shooting about the heated political rhetoric. Remember that sheriff in Arizona? Let's roll this clip and let's see how similar it is.
You've worked in a political administration, you deal with counter-terror threats, but you've also paid attention as someone who thinks about threats around the country to political dialogue, the coarsening of dialogue across the media spectrum, from entertainment to news and commentary. And I was thinking, hearkening back to President Obama's words after Gabby Giffords was shot, and then to Bill Clinton back in 1995 after Oklahoma City, and I'll put something he said up on the screen. He said back then, President Clinton, "We hear so many loud and angry voices in America today whose sole goal seems to be to try to keep some people as paranoid as possible and the rest of us all torn up and upset with each other. They spread hate. They leave the impression that by their very words that violence is acceptable." Let me emphasize, as we sit here today, we know nothing about motivation in this particular case, political or otherwise. But President Clinton's words back in 1995 could be true today, couldn't they, about how some of the public discourse can fall on more vulnerable ears?
So there is a political fight on over who's going to benefit from these tragedies. Gun control is in the air, but obviously they can't take it on in a forward assault fashion, so they're looking for any way to sneak it under the rug, to sweep this stuff under, to circumvent the normal avenues and sneak in some form of gun control on the back of whatever tragedy they could find, whether it was staged or whether it was just seized upon and happened to come along at a very convenient time. But, of course, we have in the media Mayor Bloomberg. He calls for gun control after the Colorado shooting. Bill Kristol, supposedly a Republican, and he calls for gun control, says the president needs the courage to take it on and that people shouldn't be able to have semiotic weapons that could fire 100 bullets. He wants gun control. Rupert Murdoch, owner of Fox News and, of course, the whole larger company, he wants gun control, also supposedly a Republican. Calderon, president of Mexico, cannot get enough gun control. Anything that happens, Fast and Furious, even before Fast and Furious, any kind of North American agenda meeting, he wants gun control in America. They already have total gun control in Mexico. It's a nightmare state, but he once again wants it after the Colorado shooting. Senator Feinstein, well, of course, she wants the gun control, but it's a bad time, she says. It's a bad time for gun control. Here's a related article in CNN. Little to gain, lots to lose for Obama and Romney on guns. And they basically talk about how great gun control would be, but how it's the wrong time for gun control because all these polls show Americans won't go for it. Oh, I thought it's so damned important. You got to have gun control. It's to save lives, but it's the wrong time. You're just going to sit cowardly silent and not call for gun control? No, why don't you show who you really are, Senator Feinstein, and all the rest of you who have your own concealed carry permits, who there's photos on the web of you firing weapons, but you want to take away everyone else's weapons, their right to defend themselves. You can see the naked ambition for the gun grab. And of course, Kurt Nimmo wrote about this article over the weekend. The Council on Foreign Relations has said, don't worry about Hillary Clinton's small arms treaty. Don't worry, Americans. This isn't really gun control. It's about international trade. Don't worry. Nothing's going to happen. Well, look, you can see where they're going with all this. But the fact is maybe shocking to you. Aurora, Colorado, already had complete gun control. They were one of the most hardcore Nazi gun control cities in the entire country. You couldn't have guns there. If you pulled out a gun in that theater, they would have arrested you too, even if you shot the killer. Maybe they would have some sympathy and drop the charges, but technically speaking, you couldn't have a concealed weapon in there. We all know what that policy leads to. It's victim disarmament, and unfortunately, 12 people were killed in that theater. Another 58, total of 70 people were injured, shot, what have you. How could we prevent this tragedy? Obviously, even though we can spend billions and billions, you can't spend trillions and trillions on having body scanners at every last place in public. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of movie theater chains, how many shopping malls across the country. You couldn't really have security everywhere, and you can't take away all the guns because of that pesky Second Amendment. Well, Mike Adams actually has the solution. It's a bit of a riddle. See if you can figure it out. It's the answer, the low-cost solution to how they could have stopped this theater massacre shooter or anyone else shooting. And it requires no police. It costs the taxpayers no money. It requires no upfront paperwork. It protects innocent lives. It's deployed in as little as about 5 seconds. It works anywhere, everywhere. It deters violent crime. It makes bad guys flee immediately. It's easy to learn. It functions at the local level, and it does not require control or intervention by the United Nations or any other entity. Have you guessed it? Oh, you're seeing footage of it. Here's another shooter. Two shooters, I think, who went into this computer lab, this hangout. I don't know exactly what it was. They were robbing people. It was a casino, actually, but it had a computer stations in there. It's a guy with a concealed carry, a 71-year-old old man who stops these burglars, ends the crime. They run away. They're panicked. No, not a guy with a gun, not an armed senior citizen, not a citizen with a gun. We don't want to commit a crime here. Let's get out of here. Could that be the solution? What if people were concealed carry in the theater? Could they have stopped this guy? I think it's a brilliant question. But YouTube, on the other hand, doesn't want you to see that video. They want you to see every violent video game in the world, every clip from every Hollywood movie you could find on YouTube, all kinds of violence. But you can't watch the video of the 71-year-old man who they basically blacked out of the media, barely reported on how he stopped a holdup of what, that must have been 50, 100 people in that room. He stopped them, ran those robbers away, and but you can't see that video if you're not 18 and logged on their little identity center on Google-controlled YouTube. Yes, we have that story up at Infowars.com. You can still watch the video. It's still there, but a video can't go viral when everyone who wants to watch it has to log in. It slows the video and basically kills it. That's the video you just saw. I don't know if we want to roll it again, but if you wanted to watch the video of how concealed carry could stop burglars, shooters, murderers in the progress of their crime, well, let's hope you're 18. Let's verify that it's okay for you to see this. Even though there's nothing graphic in the video, it just shows self-defense. It shows fighting back and not being a victim, whether you're in a casino or anywhere else in public. That's the only way to be protected in public. Police can't stop you. It'll take them a minimum of 5 to 8 minutes if you're in the best cities in the country. If you're in Detroit, by the way, they won't show up for hours and hours, and in one case that was in the papers, more than 24 hours for murders. The police can't and won't save you. It doesn't matter if they duplicate, triplicate. It doesn't matter if they have 10 times, 100 times the cops. Cops can't protect you from this stuff. Only the people already there on the scene of the crime. And I've said enough. And finally, tonight on the Batman Massacre, tragic as it is, was it also part of the larger predictive programming? We know all kinds of weird stuff have been inserted into movies, books, you name it. And here is the 1986 Dark Knight Returns Batman comic book, and it portrays a theater shooting. This is not the only place this has popped up in the media, but very interesting that this was one of the key source materials for this whole trilogy of Dark Knight branded Batman movies. And here is this guy who goes into a porn theater. He's upset with the people in the theater. They even have a mind control thing in the background in the second panel. I don't know if you can see it there. In the final panel, they have 3 slain in Batman-inspired porn theater shootout. Details to follow. Was this just a coincidence? Certainly if it was eerie. Or is it part of the larger pattern of predictive programming? Well, frankly, that's a subject for a whole nother show. We'll get into that someday here on the Infowars Nightly News. Now, we have Alex's analysis coming up on the other side, but first, the quote of the day. Those who manipulate the organized habits and opinions of the masses constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. And that, of course, is Edward Bernays, the mainstream voice on propaganda, the man who coined the term, the man who started this entire 20th century mind control manipulation for the purposes of the controllers. We'll be back on the Infowars Nightly News after this. We're back on the Infowars Nightly News. I've laid out my analysis of the gun control motives behind the Batman massacre, the details we know about the shooter himself. But now Alex is going to give you his breakdown. I'm sure he's thought of many things that I didn't. That's coming up in just a second. But I do want to remind you, we are subscriber supported. We need your help, not only in spreading the word, but in financially backing our operation as well. You've really helped us grow. But if you're not sure what prisonplanet.tv is all about, you can get a 15-day free trial. You could sign up, try it out, see all the great material, and then if you can like it, you could stay with us and help support us financially while you work to get the message out. But then there's planetinfowars.com, which is potentially even more powerful, totally free, user-driven. You create an account and you fight the info war your way. You push articles you think are important, and you network with the people that you want to get to know, whether they're local in your area or spread out across the globe. The info war will take all of us, and this is one way you can help fight back. Now I take you to Alex's analysis of this entire Batman massacre and the agenda that lurks in the dark shadows behind it.
And welcome back to this Monday, the 23rd day of July, 2012 edition of Infowars Nightly News. Thank you, Aaron Dykes, for conducting the news portion. Now, this evening, I want to give you a news brief and break down some of the news that's broken since I got off the radio today, now that it's the evening. And I also want to recap some of the news that we didn't properly cover today here on Infowars Nightly News. Also, if you're watching us out there later on the web and would like to get this news fresh when it first is presented, and you'd like to support alternative truth-seeking media, we have a 15-day free trial running right now. It's $5.95 a month if you choose to stay members at prisonplanet.tv. We're not funded by taxpayer money like MSNBC that has the government steal your money and then they're giving banker bailouts on record. We're here supported by you if you believe in alternative voices out there to the corporate system shoveling horse manure on us and force-feeding us lies on a daily basis. prisonplanet.tv. I got a lot I want to cover here. Financial news, the latest in Syria, some drone news, obviously the whole shooting situation that just makes my mind race with all the data that points towards inside job false flag. But first off, I want to read a couple articles here that just illustrate the fact that you cannot trust the system. We trusted them far too long. They got on a very long leash, basically broke the leash, and now there's just a culture of pure corruption, pure lying, the higher up you go, not just here but worldwide. Here's an example. We reported on this at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com a year and a half ago when Fukushima happened. We told you it exploded and ejected rods miles away. We told you that different citizen groups and professors were in the area showing the radiation was much higher than what the news was saying. People were dying of radiation sickness. The examples went on and on and on. And we were called conspiracy theorists, in fact, by major newspapers in Japan and the United States. Just type in Alex Jones fear-mongering about radiation in Fukushima. The problem is I knew the trade winds came right across the Pacific. Now we know that 3 months into this, over a year ago, they were catching, the government was testing, the big bioaccumulator fish like tuna. They were full of radiation. They put it on your plates. My wife was in Europe as a young lady, or I guess teenager, when they had the big Chernobyl event in '86. And all the schools would not let you have milk produced in Europe or any greens, carrots, you name it. It all had to be shipped in. Everything we had was frozen for at least 6 months because it was bioaccumulating. They had to get rid of all those crops. They had to, not take the milk from the cows for a while because they eat it off the ground and bioaccumulates in the milk, bioaccumulates in lettuce or spinach. This was 5 reactors blowing up, each one bigger than what happened at Chernobyl. And I had top scientists on. One of them's the top, advisor to the EU, saying, yes, this is incredible. Dr. Busby, by the way, remind me, we've got to get him back on. I'll write that down right now. Dr. Busby, because he's been totally vindicated about them lying about the type of radiation. So we knew with the isotopes coming out what had been shown. We knew when the Pentagon, who had ships out there, wouldn't release data. They'd flown drones over. And we knew when they were reporting lower radiation in and around Fukushima than in Tokyo, where people had their own detectors, sophisticated detectors that could give you the exact reading, we knew it was a lie. And people said, oh, man, not everything's a lie. Come on. You know what? Not everything's a lie. Come on. Well, it turned out it was a lie. And it's RT, ABC News, you name it, Fukushima contractor forced workers to fake radiation readings. They would put the radiation readers that were later given to the government, Tokyo Power and Electric, they would have them put them inside lead boxes. I mean, this just shows the craziness. Why not be honest with people about it so they can make preparations and move out of the area? They were telling schools just 12 kilometers away, don't worry about the radiation. And children on the news were dropping dead because if you're young and strong, radiation poisoning will just cause your heart to seize up, basically. There's like, never mind, and then directors and workers were collapsing and dying. It's like, no, it's not radiation. Don't be a conspiracy theorist. See, if you don't trust known certified liars that have been caught lying thousands of times, you're a bad person. Well, I'm bad man. I am bad man. Now, I've covered one article of about 50, but there you go. Don't trust these liars is the moral of the story. You can pull it up with video. Fukushima contractor forced workers to fake radiation readings. Yeah, a year after we told you, there it is. By the way, universities here reported super high radiation readings, sometimes 30, 40, 50 times higher. They just said, well, we're going to say it's safe now. Here they don't fake it. They just say, oh, we're just going to say that amount's safe now. But it wasn't prior to this. Safe now. But you said it was dangerous before. Safe now. Kind of like pre-1990, they wouldn't let the troops use DU. After 1990, they said, use it. It's a death sentence from the heavy metal effects and the particuli alone, not to mention the radiation. Oh, but that's a conspiracy theory, too. It doesn't matter if I've had the former head of the DU program who wrote the book for the Pentagon on it, Dr. Doug Rockey, probably 15 times over the years. Oh, what about this one? When the whole Penn State thing broke last year, I said Mr. Paterno definitely knew about it, Joe Paul, whatever his name was. And now even the former FBI director who did the investigation said, yeah, the entire top staff knew. Really, you think Sandusky was buggering little children with his little charity, which the word is they were supplying them to other elitists? Yeah, no kidding. Do you think that he was doing this at high noon and in the afternoon in a giant field house showers? Folks, I played football at the high school level. I mean, those things during the day are just crawling with people and at night. We're talking the middle of the day in there raping children. And Joe Paterno didn't know. And remember, oh, come on, it's not that bad. Don't talk bad about Joe Paul. I had a person in my office who's into football come up and go, I don't think he was involved. Come on. Not mom and apple pie Joe Paterno. Notice he died real quick after the scandal started. Yeah, got him out of the way. Folks, it's time to stop being naive, okay? The criminals running our society have killed thousands of our troops in lethal experiments they knew were lethal. Look up Project Shad and other programs. You don't get into this club unless you're into manipulating and killing people. Grow up. So now they've taken Joe Paterno's statue down. Oh, I was right again. And again, it's not hard to be right. When you've got reactors blowing up with mushroom clouds and we blow up the video and you can see spent fuel rods and we look up that design of General Electric reactor and oh, there's the casing, there's the rods. I went on air the day after it happened. I had a top physicist on. I said, you know, Dr. Bowman, former head of Air Force Star Wars program, a nuclear physicist. I said, you've seen the videos. We sent it to him. Does that look like spent fuel rods ejecting? He goes, yes, it does appear to be of the General Electric Max Core design, plutonium, uranium. Look, it's not that I'm smart. I want to investigate things, and so I get experts on. I do research, real brain-tingling research, okay? The point of mental exhaustion. And we were right about that, okay? We do our homework. Just understand this isn't a game. This isn't a joke. Chertoff. Excuse me, Michael Chertoff. Janet Napolitano's husband. I mean, what a pair. That's a joke, folks. Chertoff suggests pre-crime solution to mass shootings. Oh, right when the TSA on the street's being rolled out, right when the new white al-Qaeda is being introduced, right with all the PSAs about bombings and shopping malls and public places and all this rollout. He says we need to see something, say something, spies on the ground, and to track everybody and have the NSA watching everyone, which they're already doing. They now admit, yeah, we listen to everything you do. It's illegal. So what? We have the weapons. By the way, it's to keep you safe from mass shooters who were in secret Department of Defense brain interface programs like the Ronald McDonald killer. We're all told he's a killer. Seen the first time today, literally looking like a mind control subject out of Central Casting. Sorry, let me get into the NSA. Here's Steve Watson's article. He has links to it in Wired Magazine and a bunch of other mainline publications. The NSA has now admitted in court they listen to all and track all real-time communications with keyword software. Feds admit NSA spying violated Fourth Amendment. Released a letter Friday to avoid media scrutiny. Like we need them who've told us they're not spying on us with giant, huge command bases everywhere, with hubs built into all the telecommunications systems, with dozens of whistleblowers coming out at the highest level saying they spy on everything in real time. Like we needed you to admit it. Oh, I thought none of this was true. I thought I was a liar. They don't do that in America. But now they're saying, hey, we need to stop the Ronald McDonald killer. He's so scary. Here's another one. ATF boss threatens whistleblowers. We've been covering that. Just telling them, Director Todd Jones, telling people, we're going to grind down on you. That's a quote he puts in there. We're going to grind down here. You don't talk outside the agency about us shipping guns to Mexico to blame the Second Amendment. But you've already changed the subject, haven't you? You got the little theater event now. Oh, and then I'm about to get into the shooting news here, but I thought I would hit the economic news first. But just remember, Obama has said, and the Pentagon has said, it's okay to kill up to 200-plus innocent people if they want to kill one, quote, terrorist who isn't working for them in Libya or Syria that they publicly run. Yeah, I mean, how do you get that dichotomy or that paradox, that oxymoron out of the way? All over the world, in countries that are supposedly even our allies, these drones will blow up an apartment building, blow up a wedding, a funeral, kill hundreds. And we go, oh, that's collateral damage. Little kids, women blown apart. You don't see them on the news. You don't see flags at half-mast. But when it's a staged event and 12 are dead, Obama starts crying. Oh, I got killed. It's so horrible. But when they're crying those crocodile tears, remember, worldwide they're engaged in lawless murder and killing our own troops in secret experiments that have been declassified over the years. But let's hit some financial news first. How long have I told you? The Federal Reserve has promised no QE3, no quantitative easing that will accelerate inflation. But they've depressed things so much, it's okay for the bankers to do that just a little bit, in their view. Spain fears send U.S. Treasury yields to record low. Oh, I thought the more we give the foreign banks, it was going to fix Ireland and Greece and Spain. Oh, it's designed as a global taxation where they hold us hostage. Dow plunges 200 amid EU fears. Techs skid. Now, here's the big important article. Fed looks at third round of easing. Financial Times of London. Doesn't get any more globalist than that. And they say that the recent slowdown of the economy, the Federal Reserve may consider something for which it has always set the bar very high. A third round of quantitative easing, where they give themselves unlimited trillions, and then for them being given it, they then loan it back to government and others at interest, propping up their derivatives that cause this. That's a pretty good system. It's like you shoot your neighbor in the head and get a medal for it, and then you're the doctor that does the brain surgery on them. Wild. Fed looks, and the surgery's another bullet hole in the head. I forgot that part. Fed looks at third round of easing. So there's that report. Again, Spanish fears, stock markets, bailout increasingly seen as inevitable, and then another bailout, another. It's just too big to fail, and it's signed on to $1,000+ trillion that's impossible to pay back of the banker debt. But the public isn't sophisticated enough to know that, and the financial publications won't tell them. Well, they think we're so pathetic, they are starting to say we're slaves to foreign banks, and then it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool we got hijacked by foreign banks. Yeah, the Federal Reserve's really private. Yeah, we're slaves. That's right, you're slaves, America. There's nothing you're going to do. SWAT team standing by. We're going to take you cops' pension funds, too, and you're going to thank us for it. Global banks elite confirmed to hold $32 trillion in offshore accounts. Anthony Gutiardi over at our site has reported on this, and he's got links to Al Jazeera, HSBC, Citigroup, Bank of America, all these guys. They take their money offshore, tax-free, and then nothing's done. That's just the way it is. But your taxes, they said the highest taxes are really on working class people. That's where most of the audits are done, because you don't want them going after the actual big guys. Zero Hedge is reporting, of course, and we're going to have Dr. Roberts on tomorrow about this, about all the big major European and U.S. banks fixing interest rate prices. That scandal's been going for a while. That's from Zero Hedge. That doesn't seem to be a big deal. So there is the news on that front. Let's shift gears to the Ronald McDonald killer, who they're already saying did it, and has admitted he's done it, but he's been flopping around in the jail cell, spitting at people. Now they roll him out, so drugged he can't even talk, and you can't act. I mean, he's drugged. You've seen the video of him. I mean, I hope they don't commit a mass shooting and come arrest me and drug me up and make my hair look like Ronald McDonald and go, look, he's crazy, and I'm just sitting there going, I mean, it's like, oh, he's the bad man. He did it. The witnesses are all, we saw two guys dressed like cops throwing bombs in there and smoke, and they were shooting, and somebody let him in. No, it was somebody else, and never mind all that. And hey, just because you know why? The police chief of Colorado town, rocked by Massacre, Dark Knight Rises screening, is a New Jersey native who spent 21 years with the NYPD. Chief Daniel Oates. And I was reading about him. The latest right-wing conspiracy theory is that the massacre took place in Aurora because of Chief Oates served as head of the NYPD's intelligence division. Oh, the folks that helped make sure the news of 9/11 didn't get out. And was part of Bloomberg's administration that wanted gun control. That means ban guns. They have banned guns in New York. And I watched him. It was very surreal with Dave Mustaine sitting there on my couch and his wife at my house this Friday. I watched the nighttime, not name dropping, it's just a funny little image there. And he's like, there are people saying things that aren't true, by the way, on the internet. Don't believe it. And he went on for like an hour to thank the police and say how great they were and all they'd gone through and like fake cry. I mean, this was sick. This was shit, folks. They do this stuff. I don't know if he's involved, probably not. But I'll tell you something, folks. They keep doing this in Colorado because that's where the real government's based. And I'm telling you, I've researched Columbine. That was a false flag. Go look into it. It'll blow your mind. Okay? But he says we shouldn't investigate, and neither does the Council on Foreign Relations. They've come out and said, don't worry about Hillary's small arms treaty. Yeah, I'm sure Forbes and others say it'll restrict guns and register them and all this, and we've done whole reports showing you where they say they're going to take your guns under it. They're going to implement it slowly, like, salami slicing. But the CFR says go back to sleep. Kind of like Obama said he wouldn't sign NDAA, but of course he did. They want to kill opposition to this because they don't want it to unify people. And that moves me next over to the rest of that news. Mexico's Felipe Calderon says ban our guns like they have in Mexico so we can have the highest crime rate in the world like they do, or Chicago or New York. Piers Corbyn, get out of my country, punk, Stop coming over here. Why don't you go hack some phones in England or something, or engage in some other crimes? You know, you got bodyguards and people, coward. Don't come over here and say it's time for us to restrict our guns. He's out doing that. I mean, look at that twit. Bloomberg, you know, the guy that wants to control what you eat and do, total control freak, piece of trash. He's doing the same thing, suing gun makers all over the country, trying to ban the Second Amendment by fiat. And now we have Rupert Murdoch. If you think I'm joking, you can look this up. We now have Rupert Murdoch. It's up at Infowars.com. Huffington Post. He tweeted that it's time to do something about guns and restrict the Second Amendment. I'm looking for my printout here. I'll find it in just a moment. There's so many articles. Oh, here it is. There you go. Rupert Murdoch calls for tougher gun control, agreeing with Mayor Bloomberg. Well, yeah, now that they've got you on the phone hacking, they got you by the little cojones. Continuing here, Bill Kristol, good Trotskyite. You didn't know he was a Trotskyite? His dad was a top heir for Stalin, and then Trotsky had to leave. Democrats being foolish, not pushing tougher gun laws, and goes on to say, you know, it's time to go after our guns. He goes on to say, I don't think they have a right to semi-automatic, which is most guns, that could shoot hundreds of bullets at a time. And I actually think Democrats are being foolish. So the Republicans are like, come on, go ahead and take the guns. We understand. We're good Trotskyites. The average conservative's like, good, take our guns. Very good. So there you have it. And Mitt Romney wants to ban semi-automatics as well back when he was governor. So we're in a lot of trouble. Most crimes aren't committed with semi-automatics. Last year, the ATF wanted to ban most shotguns, saying if they can be bottom-loaded, they could be adapted to take a clip. The answer is people in there with guns. Did you see the old guy in Florida, the internet cafe, and thugs come in with guns to rob it, and he just draws down and shoots them, and they run. Got arrested. Shot him a little 25. More guns, less crime. Chicago, New York, total gun bans, highest crime rates. We don't want to live like that. The guy behind the camera, when he used to go to college, when people try to rob him on the subway. Okay, I've been on the subway and had people come over and size me up and ask me about my stuff, seeing if they think I'll go along with it out of fear and give it to them. When they realize I'm about to bash their brains out, they back off. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the type of garbage that goes on, and I've had enough of it. You control freak big city criminals in Chicago and New York and L.A., go to hell. Get out of my country. I was going to get into Syria, but we're just out of time here for the nightly news. Let me just hit it really fast here. Syrian forces bombard Damascus. Fight rages in towns nearby. It's al-Qaeda the West is funding there. Israel may act to stop Syria arms reaching Hezbollah. They're now reporting that Hezbollah is going to attack England during the games. Oh, yeah, Iran's done everything they can to not get attacked. Now they're going to order Hezbollah. Well, the headline is Israel says Iran to attack during the games. We're that close to World War III starting with the Russians coming in on it. That's why the government's digging in, getting their checkpoints ready. That's why all the police are being told in October, get ready for all hell to break loose. I mean, they're trying to roll out the rebranding from al-Qaeda to domestic terrorist. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, they're going after our free speech. They're testing the EAS, internet kill switches, and radio and TV kill switches. Syria moves chemical weapons before wider offensive. A defector says, kind of like the defectors we had on Saddam, saying he had nukes. London braces for Israeli strike on Iran during 2012 games. Times of Israel. Because they just say Iran's going to attack. Remember, we had the whistleblower inside saying coming in after the game, something will change the world. Troops are standing by. We may stop it by talking about it, but this is chilling. This is chilling. London on alert for terror attack ahead of Olympic Games. All right, that's basically it. We'll cover it all tomorrow. We'll cover it all more tomorrow at 11 a.m. Central on the radio. Great job to the entire crew of Infowars Nightly News and all the webmasters and writers at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Great job to Rob Jacobson putting this piece together for the Nightly News. And again, to the entire crew and all of you that support us. We couldn't do it without you. So please subscribe at PrisonPlanet.tv, where you help us fund this operation that reaches millions a week just over the internet alone. I'm Alex Jones signing off for Teleprompter Free News, Infowars.com and PlanetInfowars.com, the people's social network.